Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Elephants in the Room. Thank you guys so much for being here. My name is Nicole. If you're new here, if you're already a listener or you've heard an episode before, welcome back. I love you guys so much, and I'm really excited to talk about today's episode. Today's episode is about assumptions, about the silent stories that we tell ourselves, the spirals that happen in our minds when we don't get clarity, and how not trusting ourselves leads to create chaos just to feel safe. Because for a lot of us, chaos is what we grew up knowing. We're breaking down the psychology behind why we assume, how it connects to catastrophizing, and why your thoughts, especially the ones you repeat, are shaping your reality. We're going there. Because living in assumption might feel protective, but it's actually what's keeping you anxious, disconnected, and sometimes sabotaging really good things. Yeah, if you guys just find yourself in a position where you feel like your mind races, you're always preparing for the worst, or you just want to feel more peace, this one's for you. And I always say this, and I'll say it again. I am not a psychologist. I'm not a therapist. I am not an expert in any of these topics that we talk about. These are just things that I go through, and I feel like I have started to identify in my life, and I practice trying to identify because I want to be able to connect with you guys, because I want to be able to bridge the gap and help be a voice of encouragement and reason in your life when a lot of these things are just hard to identify, and they're hard to even understand the source of and the root of. And those are things I'm still even learning. So we're just kind of going through this beautiful journey of life together that's really confusing, that's really scary, and that's really hard sometimes. Well, let's just start by defining assumption. What is an assumption and why do we do it? So the definition of an assumption is when your brain fills in missing information based on fear, past experiences, or emotional bias instead of facts. There are so many times in my life that I can look back and identify that I was living an assumption. And it's really sad because the root of it is self-protection. And, we're going to get into so much more about it and where it all stems from. But I just want to pause for a second and just say, I get it. I know what it feels like to live in assumption. There's so many times that I've assumed people's intentions, that I have assumed the worst outcome. And there's also been times that I've assumed the best in people, that I've been proven wrong and that I've been let down. And I think what's really cool about what the definition says about assumption is that it says an assumption is when your brain fills in missing information based on one, fear, which I think we can all admit that we felt that way or we have walked in fear, past experiences, or emotional bias instead of facts. So cognitive biases at play when we're assuming are one, a confirmation bias. So we're only noticing information that matches what you already believe. And then a negativity bias is giving more weight to bad possibilities and good ones. Okay, I just want to talk about this for a second. This is crazy. So fear, right? Past experiences and emotional bias. Now, confirmation bias, only noticing information that matches what you already believe. This is so dangerous, and I've done this in my life. It's almost like, the classic tale that they tell of when you first meet someone and you fall in love and they show you who they want you to believe that they are. And they're not actually that person. They may be love bombing you. They may just be in fear of showing you who they truly are. Not to say that we obviously all naturally try to show our best selves when we're, in relationships. But we usually start to formulate a belief about a person or about a situation or about, a situation, whatever it is. I just said situation twice, but yeah, situation twice. We tend to form a belief around it. So Oftentimes in relationships, it will be like, this person is amazing and they're so loving and they love me and we're in it till the end and this is good. This is a good relationship. And so you operate out of that space. Now, typically that's a good thing, right? Like positive thinking is really good because what we think about grows, right? And so if we're thinking positive thoughts, that grows. But it can become a problem when we're only noticing information that matches what we already believe. And that's in the definition of assumption, is that we are making these assumptions off of past experiences, fear, emotional bias, instead of facts. So when we assume, we're not looking at the facts, right? Now, again, you could say, well, no, I am picking up certain pieces and parts and then making an assumption. But pieces and parts are not the facts. Now, we're going to get into actions and how actions speak louder than words, but also I feel like that's not as black and white as we paint it out to be. But I just want to really, really emphasize this. When I was researching about this, I was like, this is crazy. So literally, I have done this before. When I believe a relationship is good or a person loves me, I will walk in that relationship with that person, whether it's a loved one, friend, romantic partner, all people from my past that I've walked in this with. And I just believe that they are good, that they love me, that their intentions are pure, that they would never hurt me, whatever, right? And I believe this so deeply that every action that they do that doesn't support that belief, I ignore. I ignore that. And I just focus on the things that they do that support my belief, which is that they love me and that our relationship is good and that they would never hurt me and that their intentions are good. Not that, no matter what kind of friendship or relationship you're in, you're always going to hurt each other. But generally believing like this person has good intentions, this person would never do this, whatever you believe. And we idolize people and we make them our saviors. We make them our gods. And we just believe so deeply that they are good. And then we ignore the reality of the situation because of our own confirmation bias. So we are only noticing information that matches what we believe. And why we believe what we believe, it comes from so many different things, our trauma, our past experiences. Like there's so many layers to it. And like I said, I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not here to diagnose anyone or whatever, but I'm just saying it's crazy to think about, and I'm sure you can think about a time where you have believed something about someone or about something, and you believe it so strongly that you literally ignore the reality of the situation because you believe in what you believe in so deeply. And you find, and that's the thing, is that whenever we believe in something, we find evidence to support it. So if we believe something is good, we will find things to support that it is good. If we believe something is bad, we will find things to support that it is bad. So that's why positive thinking is really important. But also, the core of this is that we can't be ignoring facts. We can't be ignoring evidence. Now, that doesn't mean that it's black and white, and we're going to talk about that. But I just thought that was so interesting that is such a big factor in assumption, is our own emotional bias. And I remember when I first started going to therapy, my therapist called me out for I can't remember what the word was, but we talked about thinking errors. And if you guys don't know what that is, you can go and look it up. But I was like, oh my gosh, I have, I think she said, I can't remember the word, but it was something like fairy tale thinking. And so sometimes I believed the best in people to a fault. I think there's a difference between believing the best in people and hoping for the best in people, because when we just coin every person as good and every person as pure and that they have good character, oftentimes we get let down, and oftentimes we ignore who they actually are. We focus so much on their potential that we ignore who they are. But on the same coin, we can also do that in the opposite way, which can be negative. So I just thought that was so interesting. So yeah, so that's what an assumption is. And then let's touch a little bit on a negativity bias. So giving more weight to bad possibilities than good ones. I feel like I found myself in both scenarios where I've just believed the best in someone or the best in something to a fault, and I ignore all the evidence and the truth the evidence and the facts that support what's actually happening. But I've also done the opposite, where I find myself in these negative, thinking patterns around certain situations or relationships or things, and I kind of deem something as bad. And once I deem it as bad or wrong, I just kind of find evidence to support that belief. And then I almost end up finding myself being more negative and less grateful and seeing things more black and white, which oftentimes things aren't black and white. And so I think I found myself doing both of these things when it comes to assumption. And it's just a real thing. It's a real thing. Now, why do we assume? Assumptions create an illusion of control when uncertainty feels threatening. Oh, control. We love to know. We hate uncertainty. It's uncomfortable. It's unsettling. We rather know something's going to go bad than be open to the possibility of it going bad or being good. Like, we love knowing. And I'll speak for myself when I say this. This is such a, call it a trauma response or coping mechanisms or whatever it may be, that I just catastrophize and I assume the worst. And I almost send myself into the space of something not working to protect myself from the possibility of that happening, even though right here in the present moment, something is working. But in my mind, I'm like, but down the line, it's not going to work. So I rather protect myself now and run away because I'm just going to shut down and I'm not going to be open to the possibility of it working, because anything I see that supports my story that I tell myself that I'm going to be abandoned or bad things are coming. Anytime something good happens in my life, it's so easy for me to be like, well, when's the bad thing coming? The bad thing must be coming. If something's good happening, if I'm having peace, like there must be something, because of all the trauma that I've been through in my life and all the traumatic things that I've experienced. I literally look for destruction. Like I expect it. It's become part of my expectation. And I've been healing from that and working through that, but it is really, really hard. So yeah, assumptions create an illusion of control when uncertainty feels threatening. And that's the sad thing, is that when we try to control the outcome of something, it's an attempt to feel peace. And oftentimes it doesn't actually bring us any peace, because we're not even living in reality. We're living in like chaos that hasn't even happened yet. Like we are living in the feelings and the emotions of the disappointment of something that hasn't even happened. And we actually don't know that it will happen. So yeah, it's just sad. Like when we make assumptions, they feel like armor, like something that we put on to protect ourselves, to protect our peace, to protect ourselves from potential bad outcomes. And we do it because we want peace. We want control. We want certainty. But oftentimes this armor that we put on of assumptions, it just traps us inside of the negative story that we've told ourselves since we were young. That things won't work out for us, that person won't love us, that things will go wrong. It's like this wall that we put up to protect ourselves from what could happen. And there is wisdom in guarding your heart. And there is wisdom in discerning if a relationship or a situation isn't right for you anymore. But when you're living so far in the future and you're not living in the present and you're assuming, you're never ever going to have the peace that you think it will bring you. If you need clarity, ask for clarity. But don't live in assumption, because it's not doing you any favors. Okay, we're going to talk about assumption's evil twin, catastrophizing. I remember when my therapist first was like, Nicole, you're catastrophizing. I was like, well, what is catastrophizing? Like, what are you talking about? Catastrophizing is when you mentally jump into the worst case scenario and believe it like it's a fact. I'm going to read that again for anyone who didn't hear it, because it hits home for me. Catastrophizing is when you mentally jump to the worst case scenario and believe it like it's a fact. Isn't that crazy that when we tell ourselves something that's not even true, that we don't even know for sure, that we're just assuming, that we literally start to believe it as a fact? It's crazy because I've talked about this before, but when you get triggered and when you get very fearful, your amygdala, the fear center of your brain, literally hijacks it and it shuts down the logic part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex. So when you get triggered or when you're scared or when you're fearful or when you're assuming and you literally feel like you can't see the good and you can't not panic and you can't, like, it feels uncontrollable, it's because it is. It's actually uncontrollable. And when I learned that, that gave me a lot of peace because, well, first, it gave me a lot more grace for myself because when I would get triggered like that and when I would get so fearful and when I started to believe the story that I told myself that I wasn't worthy, that I wasn't enough, that I was going to be abandoned, all these different things, right? That nothing good was ever going to last in my life. If something good came, then doom was coming. When I started to get to that place and believe those things, I got so frustrated because I couldn't get myself out of that place. Like I couldn't just think my way through it. It felt like impossible. And I always tried to like logic my way through the panic and through the fear. And until I realized that you actually can't do that is when I actually started to shift how I handled that stress and how I handled that, trigger and what would trigger my body into a fight or flight or fawn or freeze state. Is that instead of trying to think your way out of it and logic your way out of it, you're understanding that your amygdala, the fear center of your brain, literally takes over. And you have to actually calm your nervous system down before you can actually speak truth to yourself and actually look at things logically. And it's so sad because most people who struggle with this, it's rooted in childhood trauma or things that you went through as a kid. And it's so sad because it can feel like it's so hardwired into your brain and the way that you think and the way that you respond. And sometimes it kind of is. And it's just sad. Like just the other day, I had just like this realization, and it was just that like, I don't know that my body knows, my mind knows, I can logically know that I will be safe in life and in relationships and in situations. But my body really fears that it will never be safe. It's interesting because when we get triggered or we get fearful or whatever it is, it's just, it can feel so overwhelming. And I had a really, really bad moment the other day where I just broke down. I was crying. I was so triggered. My body was so wrecked. And it's like my body was just screaming at me, protect yourself, protect yourself, protect yourself. And that's how I feel so often in so many situations and in so many relationships. It gets to a point where I just kind of shut down because I just have this fear that I'll never feel safe within anything. No matter how safe a situation is, I don't know if I'll ever feel safe within it. And also, it's so hard for me to separate and discern how much of my fear of safety is around the actual situation or relationship, or how much of it is around my trauma and what I went through. And trying to decipher how much of this fear and how much of this, body reacting is me actually looking at the current situation or opportunity or friendship or relationship, whatever it is, because I struggle with this in all of those. How do I decipher what's what? And that can feel so dang overwhelming. And even after years of being in therapy, I still struggle with it. I still struggle with that self-trust and just knowing what's coming from where and why it's coming up. And that's the thing about trauma and pain is it shows up when it wants to and how it wants to. And I don't know. I think there's, I've talked about this so many times before, but just so many people think that like what we go through, and call it whatever you want, like all these buzzwords, like trauma. Like I know people hate that word, but I'm like, trauma is literally any type of stressful event that happened to you that affected you emotionally. So we all have it. But trauma or whatever, pain, wounds, like they literally affect so much of our lives, even if we try everything in our power to not let them, even if we heal, even if we learn. Like there are things that you will go through in your life that will always affect you. Now it may be less and less severe, and you may be able to respond to it differently, but pain just doesn't just like disappear. What we've been through just doesn't just disappear, even if we've healed, even if we've learned, even if we've grown. And I mean, maybe it will one day, but on my knowledge, it's not that simple. I remember one time a friend of mine said this, and I was like, this is so true. She talked about how pain and wounds and like trauma, it's kind of like, if there was like, sorry, my hair's like so annoying me right now. I keep playing with it because it's like in my face, but not in my face. That's why I feel like I always have it up. But she was talking about how, pain or trauma or any type of wound that happens to us is kind of like a ball in a box. As your life goes on, the box gets bigger, but the ball doesn't go away. So initially when it happens, you're shaking the box and the ball keeps hitting. You're getting triggered. You're getting upset. It hurts. The ball has a bigger impact on the box, right? But then over time, the box continues to grow. That ball doesn't go away. It just now hits the box less times, and it has less impact on the box because the box becomes bigger than the ball. And I loved that because I was like, I feel like that's exactly what pain and wounds is like in the healing process of it. So, okay, let's talk about creating chaos. Another thing that my therapist talked to me about, which I feel like kind of goes hand in hand with assumption. Why do we create chaos when life feels calm? First, let's talk about hypervigilance. So hypervigilance is it's trauma-conditioned brains that stay alert even in calm environments. There's also the factor of emotional addiction, which I didn't know this was a thing, but I guess it is a thing, and it makes sense to me. The body can get addicted to cortisol spikes, so stress, and then trauma reenactment. We subconsciously recreate emotional environments we know how to survive in. A lot of us want peace, but when we finally get it, and when things are finally going good in our lives, and when there's finally a sense of calm and normalcy, because of all the trauma we endured as children, and because of the chaos that we survived through, we feel uncomfortable in peace. We're not used to it. It's scary. We assume and catastrophize that the worst thing is going to happen because of the way that we were conditioned as children. And if you grew up in chaos, your nervous system got used to that, which then means that that's kind of its own weird sense of safety, is living in chaos. I remember when my therapist told me that, she goes, Nicole, you're creating chaos. I said, what? She goes, finally, you have a relationship in a situation that's going well, and that's good, and that's calm, and that's peaceful. But you aren't used to that. You aren't used to peace. So your mind is going to create a whole narrative that's not even true to create a stress and a chaos that actually gives you peace because that's what you know. And I remember when she said that, I was like, oh, crap. Okay, what? So how do I undo that? And that has taken years and time, and it's still something that I can do to this day. But letting yourself live in good things, letting yourself have peace, letting yourself be in healthy friendships and relationships is boring sometimes. It kind of feels like that. But it's because it's calm. It's peaceful. We want calm. We want peaceful, but sometimes our bodies just don't know it yet. Okay, now to touch on this, because this all ties into assumptions and like living in assumptions, okay? So that's why I'm like jumping between a million things, but I feel like this all kind of, goes together. Let's talk about the statement and or the saying, actions speak louder than words. I'm sure you've heard someone say that, like someone's actions tell you. Look at their actions. Like if they say one thing and their actions say another thing, listen to their actions. And I think this is something I've wrestled with because what I've learned is that it's not that simple. It's very complex. So yes, actions matter. Behavior often shows true intentions more than words do. But trauma, fear, and poor communication can cause mixed signals. Whoever it is that you're in a relationship with or a friendship with or a loved one or whoever it is so easy to look at someone's actions and think that it directly is about the way that they feel about you or about their desire within the situation that you're in with them, whatever type of relationship you're in. It's so easy to be like, well, their actions show me that they don't care. Their actions show me that they're not interested. Their actions show me that they don't respect me. Right? Which there's truth to that. But just like you, they have trauma, fear, and may have poor communication skills. They may not know how to communicate because their parents never taught them. They may have a fear of intimacy. Like some people are anxious attachment style, some people are avoidant attachment style. There's so much that goes into someone's actions. And so to just judge that and not understand that there may be something deeper, I feel like can often lead us to a really sad place because we assume that everything that other people do is about us and about how they feel about us. And oftentimes it's not. Now, that doesn't mean you need to stay in relationships or friendships or stay in family relationships where someone's actions are terrible and just say, well, they have trauma or they have this. Like, no, it's not an excuse for how someone treats you, but it is something that we need to consider. And I think that's part of trying to not live in assumption is that you need clarity. And to have clarity, you need to have communication. You need to talk about things. You need to talk about your expectations. You need to set boundaries. You need to express your wants, desires, your needs. Like it's not always as black and white as this is just a good relationship or this is a bad relationship or this is a bad situation or it's a good situation. Like it can be really complex. And so I think, yeah, it's easy to kind of hear that statement, the buzzwords they get thrown out on social media, like actions speak louder than words. And it's like, yes, but it's complex. And especially in close relationships in your life with close friendships, romantic partners, family members, we don't just want to write people off because they did something wrong or because they treated us wrong. We want to get to the root of it. And if we can help bring clarity to a situation and communicate our needs and set boundaries and understand them better and have more grace for them, that's amazing. Because that's where like so much, I feel like companionship can grow. Now, again, if you do all of that and then they still continue to do these things and they use their trauma or their fears or their lack of communication skills, if they blame that and just continue to mistreat you, it's like, yeah, then you need to reassess the situation and say, well, I did provide clarity. I did set boundaries. I did all these things and they're not respecting my boundaries and they're not listening to my wants or desires and they're not, all those different things. And then you make a decision from there if you want to stay in the relationship or if you want to distance the relationship. But I just think that these types of sayings that people say can really be hurtful because when I first heard that, I remember I was like, oh, actions speak louder than words. And then I read into everything that everyone did and every way that everyone treated me thinking it was about me. And sometimes it's just not. And so I just think all of that to say, I just think it's more complex than that. And I think we should be curious and stay curious and have discernment. So to tie into that, there is a difference between discernment and assumption. So discernment uses facts, patterns, and compassion. So I think when you're dealing with relationships with loved ones, family members, romantic partners, friends, whoever it is, like, yes, you do want to look at the patterns of someone's actions. You do want to look at the facts, but you also want to have a compassion around it and an understanding around it. Assumptions fill gaps with fear. So we don't want to fill gaps. And guilty as charged. And I'm trying to really walk out of that in my life, because I think living in assumption is something that I've really always struggled with. And I feel like I've fallen on both ends of the pendulum, of like actions speak louder than words, and just so much intensity. And then on the opposite side, I've also walked out of a place of just like, oh, everything's good and everyone's good, and I just need to believe the best in everyone, and I should never look at people's actions. Like, I think there's an in-between. I think both can be dangerous, at least in my opinion. But yeah, just staying curious longer. Discernment is about patience, not rushing to judgment. The next thing, let's talk about self-trust and racing thoughts. Oh my gosh, guys, this stressful. Something I really struggle with. What is self-trust? It is the ability to trust your instincts, emotions, and decisions without outside validation. Without self-trust, you spiral, overthink, and chase external reassurance. Racing thoughts, a dysregulated nervous system trying to regain control after overthinking. Yeah, I think this is something that I've always struggled with. I've always struggled with self-trust and making big decisions or even small decisions. And anytime that I'm trying to get clarity on a situation and I'm seeking God and I'm trying to really weigh my options and all these different things, I genuinely to this day don't know how to deal with it, because like today, I was walking and I read a devotional and it was great. And then I prayed and I was praying to God and I was like, okay, give me clarity on this, right? This, that, whatever. And I literally hear these voices. And I'm like, oh, is that from God? Wait, is that from God? And they're conflicting voices, and one's fast and one's not. And then I'm like, but wait, okay, now I'm anxious. So if it was from God, it would give me peace. But then I'm like, wait, am I putting my emotional bias on this? And am I just like wanting to get the answer that fits to my desire, or like where, like I literally will spiral in my mind and I get so overwhelmed. There's so much noise that I just am like, okay, I can't deal with it. I can't deal with it. And so many times in my life, I've had that happen. Like I remember before I met David, my boyfriend, my now current boyfriend, I was divorced. I obviously had a lot of relationship trauma, all the things. I remember when I first started talking to him, you know, I was trying to decide what I wanted to do and figure out my feelings, because I never thought I was going to date again or get married again, or I don't know. I was pretty content being single forever because I was really, really hurt from my previous relationship and just really just was happy within myself and with my relationship with God. But all that to say, the night before, or the night that I met him, the night that we ended up finally hanging out for the first time after talking for a few months, I remember I was so excited and I had so much peace and he was so sweet and all these things. And then right before I went, I remember I got in the shower to get ready, and I literally remember having all of these voices come in my mind, like, don't go, he's not the one, he's going to hurt you, all these like intense voices. And I was like, is this from God? Is this from the enemy? I don't know. Is this from me? What are all these thoughts? Like, what do I make of this? I'm so confused. I'm so scared. And I genuinely still to this day just struggle with just this back and forth in my mind. Like I've always struggled with that, and that's a vulnerable thing to talk about, but like I've struggled with self-trust. And then I remember like when I got my first podcast sponsorship, and I wanted to move to LA, I remember like feeling really good about the decision and wanting to do it. I remember calling my therapist and being like, I'm spiraling. Like I feel that this is a good decision, but now I'm second guessing it, and this and this and this and this and this. And I'm thinking of all the pros and cons and this and this and this. My mind's just going. And she's like, Nicole, calm down. She's like, look at all of the decisions that you've made. in the past year or 2 years or whatever in your life. She goes, Nicole, you make good decisions. Your intentions are good. Why do you not trust yourself? And I was like, I don't know. Why don't I trust myself? And she was like, well, it's your trauma. And it's rooted in what happened to you as a kid and never having the safety and all these different things. Well, and we're going to touch on like this psychological meaning behind that. But I've always struggled with self-trust and making decisions and never trusting my decisions, always. And yeah, it's just really hard. So, and that, it ties into assumption, right? Because when I'm having these racing thoughts and I'm assuming the worst or assuming the best and I'm confused, it's so much of it is rooted in assumption. It's rooted in the story that I've been telling myself since I was a little girl, which was, you're not enough, you're not valuable, you're not chosen, you won't ever be chosen, you won't ever be enough, because of not feeling that as a child. And again, my parents, love them, and they chose, they had so many things in their own life happen to them as children that then affected them and made them, the way that they are, and made them struggle with addiction and all these things. Like, it's not personal. My parents didn't do the things that they did because they didn't care about me or because they're bad. It's just because they were also, walking out of all the things that they had been through and trying to cope and all these different things. But that was the story that I painted myself as a kid, because of what I went through. And then, obviously I went through a lot in my early adult years as well. But I want to talk about all of this to say, to get to a little part of the episode that can be hopefully helpful and good, is how do we break free from assumption? So the first step is name the story. What story am I telling myself right now? And I can almost guarantee you that it's a story you've probably been telling yourself for a long time. And sometimes it's not a good one. And it's not a story with a happy ending. Reality check. Do I actually know that this story is true that I'm telling myself? The third step is to regulate. Calm your nervous system before reacting. I said this earlier in the episode, but when you're triggered and when you're fearful and when you're scared and when the amygdala is really acting up in your brain, you're not going to be able to logic your way out of it. You're not going to be able to think your way out of it. You need to get your nervous system to a calmer state before you can really look at things realistically. The next one is stay curious. Ask for clarity instead of assuming. And this one is hard. Whatever situation you're in, whatever relationship you're in, whatever situation you're in. I said situation twice again, but I guess it's fine. Situation twice. But relationship, romantic, friendship, loved ones, family, whatever. Stay curious. If you are confused about someone's intentions, if you're confused about something that someone is doing to you, if you're confused about someone's actions, ask for clarity. Ask for clarity. Instead of filling the gaps of uncertainty with fear and assumption, we need to start filling those gaps with curiosity, with clarity, with being direct, with asking for things, with telling people your boundaries, whatever it looks like. We got to be able to speak up for ourselves. And it's so hard to do, and I get it. The last step is affirm. I can handle the truth. I don't have to spiral to stay safe. Peace is allowed. Sometimes we assume because assuming and making our own outcome feels safer than actually seeing and accepting the reality and the truth of the situation. Like, we want to hurt ourselves before we let them hurt us. And as noble as it is, and as pure of a place that it comes from, because it just comes from a place of us trying to protect ourselves, oftentimes our assumption and the story we tell ourselves about that relationship or that situation is more painful than the actual truth. And the thing about the truth is, even if the truth hurts and even if the reality of the situation or the relationship hurts, it comes with freedom. If we assume, that doesn't come with freedom, that just comes with anxiety. Even the hardest things in life, even betrayal, abandonment, rejection, whatever it is, those things hurt. They do. But there comes a time where you feel peace and acceptance after them. But when you stay in the assumption of that this person feels this way about you, or that this bad thing is going to happen, or that this situation isn't going to work out, or this opportunity isn't going to work out because I'm a failure, or whatever it is, when we're living in that assumption, it's worse. It's worse to live in the assumption. It's worse. So understanding that your value doesn't come from how people treat you, how people view you, what opportunities you have, what opportunities you don't have, rejection of any form. It's rooted in just who you are, and you are just valuable as you are. And even if this thing doesn't work out, that you're fearful that it won't work out, that's better than living in the assumption of it. And what if it does work out? What if it is good? What if that person does love you? What if that relationship works out? What if that friendship works out? What about the good that could come from it? Not the bad. Stay curious, be open, but love yourself enough to know that no matter what the outcome is, you will be okay. I love you guys so much. If you guys took away anything from today, let it be this. Just because you think it doesn't mean it's true. You are allowed to pause, ask questions, and not spiral just because your brain offers a scary story. And if your mind is racing, I want you to know that's not because something is wrong with you. It's because you're trying to protect yourself. But it's safe to slow down. It's safe to trust yourself. And it's safe to believe that peace doesn't mean something bad is coming. You get to choose what thoughts you water. You get to rewire your story. Thanks for being here with me. And thanks for, sitting here with me. Just wanted to say one last thing is that what we think about grows. And so there is such a beauty to not necessarily positive thinking, but gratitude thinking. Not feeding into the narrative that we tell ourselves, the story that we've told ourselves based on what we've been through in the past, based on the way people have treated us in the past, based on the ways things have gone bad in the past. Guys, I have been feeling this and seeing this in my life so much recently, is that if we are negative all the time, and if we focus on the negative, and if we reinforce those stories we tell ourselves, they will grow. They will grow. And oftentimes that's why the story we tell ourselves is so big, is because we've been telling ourselves that story since we were young. So rewiring that story, rewiring your thoughts, because if you focus on good things, positive, you could say, that will grow. If you focus on things you're grateful for, that will grow. If you focus on things that are true, that will grow. If you focus on assumption and on fears and on what's happened to you in your past and negativity, it will grow. And so I feel like I'm living that right now, where I'm like, holy crap, I'm having a lot of negative thinking patterns, and it's making me a more depressed person. It's making me a more angry person. It's making me a more resentful person. It's making me more envious. I don't want to be those things. I want to be loving, selfless, kind, strong, grateful. I want to be those things. So what things do I need to think more about and water more? What thoughts do I need to water more to have those things grow? Because literally, when we think about something, we create a neural pathway and we literally grow it. We make it bigger and bigger and bigger in our mind. And so it literally feels like an automatic response and an automatic thought. And it's not. It's something that we've built in our brain. A pathway, a neural pathway is what's called, that we've built. So we've got to create good neural pathways in our brains, good things, positive things, loving things, true things. And it's so much harder said than done. So I just pray that this episode was, I hope that it was reassuring, comforting, and that it helped you feel less alone. And I just hope you guys know you aren't crazy, and all this stuff is hard and confusing and a lot. And there's so much information out there. But yeah, I hope that this helped one person today. I love you guys so much. Thank you for being here. You guys know the drill. If you guys would like to support this podcast, you can share it with a friend. If you feel like it will help one of your friends, share it with them, share it with whoever, share it on your story. The best thing you can do is leave me a review on Spotify or Apple. That helps me so much. So please give me 5 stars if you can, and leave me a positive review. Shoot me a DM, comment on my video, follow me on all my socials. All of them are Elephants in the Room. I love you guys so much, and I will talk to you next week. But before I close out, what elephants are in your room? My name is Nicole, and I said this already, but I'll talk to you guys next week.